So we just had a massive iPad event, and for the mini fanboys and girls out there, you were probably disappointed by the lack of any updates for the iPad mini 6. Well, not to worry, because Mark Gurman comes to save the day and reassures us the mini 7 is coming out this year, so let's delve into this. Right, essentially in his latest Power On newsletter, Mark Gurman briefly mentions that we can expect the iPad mini 7 to launch at the end of the year at the earliest. And that makes sense considering we saw the Mini 6 at the 2021 September event, and so the Mini 7 will probably launch at this year's September event alongside the iPad 11 and iPhone 16. Unfortunately, when Gurman moves on to the upgrades we can expect, he basically says that this will be a very boring refresh, with the main upgrade being a new chipset. Now, which chipset will it get? Well, this is Gurman we're talking about. The man loves to be vague, and so he doesn't specify, but thankfully we don't have to rely just on him, and there are other sources. Because in case you've missed my previous videos on the Mini 7, a lot of previous rumors have suggested this refresh might only offer the A16, which would not really be an upgrade. I say upgrade in quotations because, simply put, going from A15 to A16 would be so minor that would basically give us no performance upgrades. Thankfully, Mark Gurman isn't sifted through technical information posted by private accounts on Twitter who has been credible in the past, and they now say the Mini 7's gonna feature a variant of the A17, which is way more exciting news. Now, first of all, I need to know who this private account is, so if you're in the inner circle, please hit me up because I want all the latest details immediately. But what this account says is fantastic news. We all know the A17 Pro and the 15 Pro brought over ray tracing to the iPhone, and whilst I don't particularly care about this, it did allow for AAA titles to come to the iPhone 15, which makes it an awesome pocket rocket. And so for those serious about having the best portable gaming device, I feel like the Mini is the ideal form factor because it has a display that's larger than any iPhone, but of course, it's still very compact and is much easier to game with than the full-sized iPads. Now, the report doesn't specify if it's getting the A17 Pro or a basic version of the A17. I can see Apple going either route, but if we do see a basic A17, it's likely going to be a binned variant with one fewer GPU core, so there's not going to be a massive difference in the overall performance of the chipset. I know right now not many games support ray tracing, but the more devices that support the technology, the more likely it is for game developers to jump on boards and take advantage of the hardware. And I've seen many of you guys ask me in the past how games like COD Mobile run on previous iPad minis, and so just imagine the game experience when there's gonna be ray tracing inside. It will be amazing, and you could maybe even run the full-fat version of Call of Duty, since A17 Pro right now does support some games ported directly from the PS4. So yes, a new chipset would really turn this iPad into the ultimate gaming machine, and I'm praying it gets that and not the A16. You know what else I'm also praying for? For you to subscribe to the channel, of course. I would greatly appreciate it, and will bring you the latest about Apple right to subscription box, so please consider it. The button is below. We're trying to hit our next milestone of 16,000 subscribers, so join the saranbyte gang now. Anyways, I know what you're wondering at this point. The base iPhone 16 should be getting last year's chipset, so maybe they plan to chuck the base A17 in this as well? Well, yes, based on what Apple's done with the iPhone 14 and 15, that would make sense, especially since they can't put a Pro chipset in a non-Pro device. But we have actually heard all iPhones this year are getting a variant of the A18. This private account themselves do still say it's likely there's going to be an A18 Pro for the Pro phones that offer slightly more grunt, but at least offering one of the latest chipsets on the flagship iPhone again. You could argue this does make the chances of the Mini getting the full fat A17 Pro higher as well, since any leftover chips for the 15 Pro are going to go directly to the Mini. I will mention though, the iPad Air surprisingly did not get an M3 chipset. It stuck to the older M2, which doesn't support ray tracing, and so that could force the Mini to stick with a weaker chipset like the A16. I'm really hoping that's not the case though, because Apple rarely updates the Mini in the first place, and so they might as well give it a new chipset. The Mini 6, when it launched, did have the A15, which was an upgrade over the A14 in the Air 4 at the time, so this wouldn't be the first time the Air actually is a little worse compared to the Mini. Also want to mention, Apple moving to the M4 so quickly could suggest they're done with the N3B process the A17 and M3 chips are based on, because they're apparently very expensive to produce, and M4 is based on the much cheaper and efficient N3E process, and so maybe the Mini also gets the regular A18, that would be nice. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if any leftover A17 Pro chipsets ultimately go to the Mini. I'll take either chipset, just not the A16. And that's it, guys. The source does say there's going to be a Wi-Fi and cellular version, but we don't need internal sources to work that out. And overall, it seems like it's mostly going to be a spec refresh, but if it gets the A17, I'm fine with that. Ultimately, if you look at the trajectory of the Mini, it only got 2 major redesigns since its conception back in 2012. And so especially after how big of an upgrade the Mini 6 was design-wise, it makes sense that the Mini 7 is a simple spec update, and plus there likely won't be a price increase. However, Apple always does tweak a few other things with their spec updates, and so let's delve into the other rumors we've heard about this iPad. So for one, we've heard that Apple's allegedly reducing the jelly scrolling effect with this new Mini 7. Now, I'll still be honest with you guys, I personally felt this was overblown on the Mini 6. I could easily look past it. Yes, I am basically blind with my massive spectacles, but I really could not pick up on anything when using the Mini 6. However, I'm not going to pretend like it's some sort of conspiracy theory. I am aware it puts off some consumers. And so to reduce this, Apple plans to rotate the screen assembly to reduce the jelly scrolling effect in portrait orientation. Now, does that mean jelly scrolling is going to become more prominent in the landscape orientation? Who knows? But at the end of the day, I don't really care about this because, as I said, I wasn't bothered by this in the first place. I know people are also hoping we see OLED, and that is in the works, but it's not releasing now. You see, the iPad Pro is only just getting the OLED upgrade this year, and so it's going to take a while for that to be passed down the range, and so I would expect the iPad Mini 8, whenever that launches, to get the OLED upgrades. Now, please do not wait for that based on what I'm saying, because if we're getting the Mini 7 3 years after the Mini 6, you could be waiting till 2027 for the OLED iPad Mini. And so if you need an iPad right now, the Mini 7 or some other iPads, it's still going to do the job perfectly fine. Your eyes won't burn if you don't get the inky blacks of OLEDs. And even if you want that, just get the iPad Pro. Anyways, another change we've heard about is the front-facing camera being upgraded. The leaker doesn't specify what's changing, but of course, a landscape camera makes sense because the Air and Pro got this and the Mini is now the only iPad with a portrait camera, so I'm assuming we're getting that upgrade, but the sensor itself should not change considering the Air and the Pro have the same 12 megapixel ultra wides for center stage on the front, and so the Mini 7 is just going to reuse that again as well. Now we can expect double the base storage like we saw on the Air 6, that's a very nice upgrade, and of course we could see Bluetooth and Wi-Fi upgrades like we usually do with spec updates. I'm also looking forward to the new colors. I'm assuming they're going to be slightly different from the Air 6. I'm hoping for something more punchy because I'm not a fan of the muted colors. And finally, we should see Apple Pencil Pro support. So yeah, if you want the new fancy pencil, you have to get the Mini 7. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. And thank you for watching.